Tired of carrying your water bottle everywhere? Let's crochet a simple water bottle holder bag you can wear. Plus, I'll show you 3 different strap options, and it fits a bottle of wine. Perfect for last-minute gifts. Hi, it's Krista at The Secret Yarnery. Today we're making a bag for a water bottle that is super easy, just using scraps of yarn and simple crochet stitches. The water bottle bag holder is made in a spiral, so no messy joining, and the handle and bag are one piece, so no sewing either. You can customize the bag to fit your bottle and make the strap any length, handheld, shoulder, or crossbody. Plus, it fits a bottle of wine if you're looking for a last-minute gift. To make your water bottle bag holder, you're going to need yarn. I'm just using scraps of this size 4 worsted weight acrylic, and I just picked 3 shades. I used a 6mm crochet hook for my project, and you'll also need a stitch marker. You can arrange your yarn colors in any order. I'm going to be using white for one complete stripe, and I'm going to be changing colors every couple rows with my 3 shades of turquoise, and I'm going to start with the darkest and end with the lightest. To start, you can do a chain 3 ring or a magic loop. I'm going to just do a chain 3 ring for this tutorial, but a magic loop works just as great. So make a slip knot and pop that onto your hook and chain 3. Now we're going to go into the very first chain we made, right there. Just pop your hook in. Get your tail situated along with your work. So you want like a U shape underneath your hook, including your tail. And just hold that open with your finger and thumb. And slip stitch to form a ring. Don't let go of that opening. Chain 3. And make 14 treble crochets into the center of that ring. So wrapping your yarn twice into the center of your ring, 14 treble crochets. So there's 1. And now you can let go of the center because those stitches are going to hold it open. And just make 14 treble crochets into the center of your ring, taking care to go over your tail. If your ring gets really full of stitches, you can grab your starting chain and your last group of stitches and just pull that ring out, and that'll give you some more space. You want all of your treble crochets laying side by side, nice and flat. And 14. And now we're going to slip stitch into the top of the first treble crochet to join. So we have our chain 3, so 1, 2, 3. We're going to work right in to the top of that treble crochet. Right there. So slip stitch into the top of your first treble crochet and chain 2. Into that same stitch, right at the bottom of that chain, we're going to make 1 double crochet into the same chain. And now into each stitch all the way around, we're going to make 2 double crochets into each. So 2 double crochets into the next stitch. And 2 double crochets into the next. 2 double crochets into each stitch all the way around. So you can pause the video and just get caught up all the way around to where we began. So 2 double crochets into each stitch, and I'll meet you when you get right over here into our last stitch. So there I've made my last 2 double crochets into that last stitch, and now we're going to slip stitch into the top of our chain to join. So right into the top of that chain. Slip stitch to join. Chain 1, just pulling up a little bit of a bigger loop. And now wrap your yarn, and from behind, we're going to do a back post half double crochet. So wrap your yarn, and we're going to go in before the chain and out after the chain, like that. You can pinch your work so you just have that one stitch there. So there's our 3 loops, and we're just going to finish that in our half double crochet. So we're going to go in before the stitch and back out after the stitch. So wrapping your yarn in before the next stitch and out after the stitch. So we're working around the post, bringing your yarn back and finishing your half double crochet. So in before and out after. And you can just pinch your work so you can look at it here. You don't have to work blindly. And there's your 3 loops. Wrap and take off all 3 loops. So we're going to do 1 back post half double crochet around each stitch all the way around. That's going to form the bottom of our bottle holder or a gift bag and look just like that. So it really starts our sides and finishes off our bottom with a nice crispy edge. So you can pause the video and keep working around 1 back post half double crochet around each stitch until you have 2 stitches left. When you have 2 stitches left, pull up a bigger loop with that first color of yarn and grab whatever color you're using for your other stripe. For me, I'm using white. So now the same way, put your hook in before the stitch and out after, and put a loop of that new color yarn on your hook. Bring it through, slip stitch with both strands to join, drop your tail, and chain 1. Wrap your yarn and do a back post half double crochet around the next post, the next stitch, like that. Now into the top of our first stitch, right here, we're going to make 1 single crochet. Into the next stitch, 1 single crochet. And into the next 2 stitches, we're going to do a half double crochet into each. So a half double crochet, and into the next stitch, a half double crochet. So 2 single crochets and 2 half double crochets. And now we're just going to work our way around with 1 double crochet into each stitch. Just regular double crochets all the way around. So for this pattern, we're going to be working in a spiral. So we have less ends to sew in for our color changes. And no joining and stepping up, so it's super easy. So 1 double crochet into each stitch all the way around, and I'll meet you when we get closer to over here where we finished with our first color of yarn. When you get back around to where your first color finished, we can just do the opposite. So make a big loop of the color you just were working on and put that first loop back on your hook. Now into the top of that first chain we made where we joined our yarn, we're just going to go in there and make 1 single crochet. Just into that stitch, 1 single crochet. Into the next stitch, 1 single crochet. And into the next stitch, or the next 2 stitches, 1 half double crochet into each. So again, we did our 2 single crochets and our 2 half double crochets. And now we're doing double crochets, 1 into each stitch, all the way around. So you can pause the video, 1 double crochet into each stitch, and I'll meet you when you get closer to where we finished our other color of yarn. If you want to follow along with a written patterns are available on my website, secretyarnery.com, and all of my patterns are written in plain English, just like I was sitting there right beside you. When you get back closer to our other color, we're just going to keep doing the same thing. So popping up a bigger loop and grabbing the color that's below, putting that loop on our hook, And now just keep going, 1 double crochet into each stitch with our second color. And when we get to this slope, we're just doing the same thing, 1 double crochet into each stitch. So we're not doing anything different anymore. We're just working around, 1 double crochet into each stitch. And then every time you get around to where you finish the row below, just switch colors. So just pull up a bigger loop and put the loop below on your hook and work your way around with the row below. And I like to just work ahead. I want to end each row at the same area where our slope is, just a few stitches ahead of our slope. And I want to do that just so I can keep track of my rounds of each color. So I'm just going to work ahead a little bit with this color here instead of working all the way around. And then I'm going to get my white color back to this same area, and I'll show you why. So now both of my colors are in the same area where we started our spiral, and that's an easy way to count our rounds. And I'm going to be counting our colored rounds. I want 2 rounds of each color going up, so I'm not counting my white, I'm just counting this row here. I'm also not counting the bottom. So I have 1 row of this color. I'm going to work around 1 more time, and then I'm going to change color. So keep going until you have 2 rounds of each color. So I've done 2 rows or 2 complete rows of double crochet in my color, and I'm back on the side where the spiral is, the beginning of our slope. And I'm going to change color. So to change color, I'm going to start a double crochet, but I'm just going to take off those first 2 loops and leave those last 2 loops on my hook. And cut your colored yarn, leaving a long enough tail. We're just going to knot it later, so don't worry about having to sew it in, unless you want to, of course. Grab your next color. Just make a loop, leaving about a 4-inch tail, just long enough to make a knot comfortably. And finish that double crochet with your new color, just like that. Now drop both your tails. You can snug down your first color and crochet into the next stitch, 1 double crochet, and you can make a few double crochets. And then we'll go back and we'll just attack those tails. Now you can sew them in if you feel like it, but this is how I do it. So there are my 2 tails. I'm just going to do a gentle knot. We're not pulling it too tight. We just want it to look like normal stitches, and then gradually pulling harder. Sometimes it can slip and it'll shrink up your stitch. We don't want that. So the 3rd time, you can really pull it, especially if you're using acrylic yarn. If you're using cotton or fancy yarn, you can also just sew in your tails and then cut them off. I like to do it this way more than a magic knot because I can make sure that that knot is on the inside of my work, where with a magic knot, you have to align it to get it inside your stitches, so it's just a little bit easier. And then on the outside, you can't tell. But of course, sew them in if that's what you'd like to do. And now we're going to go around with this color for 2 stripes, and then we're going to change colors again. So 2 stripes of every color, with the white just continuing in between, or whatever color you're using in between. So 1 color changes and 1 stays the same. Of course, you'll just keep going with the same yarn if you're using a variegated yarn instead of 3 shades of blue. Then you would keep going until you had 6 rows of the variegated. So pause the video and I'll meet you when you have 2 rows of your second color done. As you're working around, your yarn can get a little bit tangled up. So if I was to go and start my blue, it would be underneath my white yarn. So when it gets like that, instead of keeping going or having to like move your ball of yarn around, I just flip my work like that. And then that color is on top. So just give it a little flip and then keep going with your new color. and then your yarn doesn't get tangled up. It's easier to flip your work or like flip it around to start with your color you're working on top of the color you finished than it is to keep going and wrangle your balls of yarn. So now that we are back around to generally the same area, we can change colors again. Now you don't have to worry about being exactly the same spot to change colors. You can if you feel like it. For me, it doesn't bother me much at all. I'm just going to get my next color of turquoise ready and start my next double crochet. So taking off those first 2 loops and leaving the last 2 on my hook and cutting my yarn. Getting my new color, my lightest shade of turquoise, loop of yarn on my hook, and I'm just going to finish that stitch with my new color and drop my tail, just holding it along the back of my work. Don't worry if this stitch gets loose or big or doesn't look right. We're going to fix it later. All we want to do is pinch our tails and make 1 double crochet into the next stitch. And a double crochet into the next few stitches. You can even work all the way around till we get back to where we started this round or this color. So now I'm back around with that color. I'm just going to do my tails where we did our join, our 2 tails right here. So we're just going to do the same thing, or you can sew them in if you feel like it, but a gentle knot, just making sure that that stitch looks appropriate, looks like a stitch. And then another knot, pulling it a little bit more snug, making sure it doesn't slip. If it slips, it's going to mess us up. And then the 3rd time is usually when you can pull. Just pull gently until you can pull really tight. And then you can just cut off those tails like that. And we're ready to keep going with the pattern. So now pause the video, keep working around until you have 2 colors of your last shade done, but not the white on top. So we're going to work 1 more time around with our turquoise, and I'll meet you back. So when you've done your 2 colors or your 2 rows of each shade, and we're getting close to our join area where we started our spiral a couple stitches before, with our neutral color, the color we're using in between our stripes, we're just going to do 2 half double crochets because we have to taper this down. So same as we built it up, we have to taper it down. So 2 half double crochets, 1 into each stitch, then 2 single crochets, 1 into each stitch, and then we're going to slip stitch into the 3rd. So a slip stitch into that stitch right there, and then chain 1 to secure your yarn and cut your yarn just like that, and pull your hook up and your yarn through and snug that down so it looks like this. We're in approximately the same area. Don't worry about exactly which stitch, it's just the area. So we had smaller stitches here and we have smaller stitches up there. That's all we need. Now we're going to keep going around the edge with our blue or with our colored yarn. So that's our slip stitch, our 2 single crochets, our 2 half double crochets, and our 2 double crochets. So the 2 double crochets before we started making that slope, we're going to start making half double crochets, or we're going to start making half double crochets instead of our doubles, because we're also going to taper this down. So half double crochets into each stitch of our slope. All the way along. So this is a different one I've been working on, but there's a better way to finish off up here. So there's our 6 half double crochets, a single crochet into that last stitch, And now into the next stitch. So we're skipping the stitch we've worked into. We're not working into this stitch right there. We're going to work into the next stitch. So it's a little bit down, but we're going to make a half double crochet into the next stitch. Like that. So it gives a nice flat finish. If you want to attach a lobster claw, we're going to do that over the next 2 stitches. But to start, it's easier to do with a smaller hook. So just put that base of the lobster claw over your next stitch and bring your yarn back just for a regular single crochet. And then you can do a loose single crochet with that same hook, or you could swap back to your bigger hook. And we want to do that into the next stitch as well. So we're just doing loose stitches with this smaller hook. So through the base of the lobster claw and into the next stitch. Bring it up and make a loose single crochet. So now our lobster claw is attached. You can go back to your normal size hook and 1 single crochet into each stitch. You can also check that you can work into those stitches with your hook. If you can't, you just go back and make them looser, less tension on the yarn. So now pause the video and keep working around 1 single crochet into each stitch, and I'll meet you when you get all the way back around over here. When you get back over where we began, we want to make 4 single crochets after we dropped our white color. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. It's also right on top of your lobster claw if you are using one. So there's 2, 3, and 4, like that. And now we're going to start our handle. So now I'm going to swap back to making the turquoise bag. It's exactly the same as right now, except there's no lobster claw on my turquoise bag. Chain 1 and turn your work. And now 4 single crochets back. We're starting our handle. There's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Chain 1 and turn your work, and 4 single crochets back. Now you can do more single crochets if you want a fatter handle. You would just start making more single crochets for that first round of our handle. So chaining 1, turning, and 4 single crochets, and make for as many rows as you like for the height of the handle you want. And you can decide how long you want your handle to be. In this tutorial, I did 32 rows for a normal, just a handle, like a carrying handle. For a shoulder strap, you can do 120 rows, and for a crossbody, you can do 160 rows. So you can just customize your strap for whatever style of water bag you want. So I'll just pause the video, keep working along, and I'll meet you when your handle is the length you want it to be. Now here is just a quick tip on how to count your rows for the handle. So we started our handle right down here, but I'm not counting below this line. And can you see how it's like every 2, there's a bit of a groove, a bit of a rut, like that, starting right here. So I'm looking from the inside of my bag, right? Here's inside. So I'm looking from the side without a handle inside my bag to the handle. So here is 1 groove. So I'm not counting anything below. I'm just counting that as the bag. So I'm counting 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30, 32. So that is how I'm counting my handle. It is 9.5 inches or 24 centimeters. And you want your hook to be on this side of your row. So if you flip up your handle, you can start crocheting into your bag when it's flipped over. And now we're also going to just fold our bag in half. So that handle is in the center of your bag. You can go ahead and count your stitches if you feel like it. So there's 5 stitches in the center. And yes, you can count it out. If you count it out, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There's 13 stitches just on this one side when it's folded in half. So minusing 5, 8, divide by 2, 4. So 4 stitches on each side. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ignoring that. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ignoring that. We're going to start into this stitch right here. So before we start our single crochet on our handle, we're just going to put our hook down into that stitch, loop of yarn on your hook or the yarn on your hook, bring it up and slip stitch. And now into the very first stitch, 1 single crochet. So we're still working on our handle, but we're also attaching it. So into the next stitch, just put your hook down and bring your yarn up and slip stitch. Into the next stitch on your handle, 1 single crochet. And the next stitch on your bag, a slip stitch. So single crochet into your bag, or single crochet into your handle, and slip stitch into your bag. So now this is our last stitch in our handle. So single crochet into your handle and slip stitch into your bag. So now our handle is joined, and we can work back up our handle making slip stitches so our handle isn't going to be as stretchy. So we're just going to work in to this space. There's like a hole and a space, a hole and a space, a hole, all the way up. So we're just going to be working into each of those stitches or each of those spaces, starting in the very first one, and we're just going to make a slip stitch into each of those holes along the edge. Everything gets a slip stitch. So slip stitch, slip stitch, slip stitch, slip stitch, all the way along your handle. So you can pause the video and just keep working along. Each one of those little holes for each row is going to get a slip stitch. So it's super easy to see where you're going. We're not working into anything funny. We're just looking for that first space along the edge and making a slip stitch into that space. So pause the video, keep working along, and I'll meet you when you get to the end of your handle right over here. So there's our last slip stitch along the handle, and we've already worked into this stitch as part of our handle. So we're going to work into the next stitch, which is right there, the next stitch of our bag, and we're going to make 1 single crochet. And we're going to make 1 single crochet into the next stitch as well. Just like that. And now we're going to slip stitch all the way along this side of the bag. So we're just going to start that one side with those 2 single crochets. That just evens out the height where that handle is. And now slip stitch into each stitch all the way along until you get to the handle. So here we are along this side. Now we have 2 choices. We can finish off our yarn, like do a slip stitch to where we began, chain 1, cut our yarn. It gives us another tail to sew in. If you don't want to sew in so many tails, like I do not want to sew in so many tails, I'm just going to pass my yarn under the handle. So now my yarn is on this side. And we're going to go into the loop and into the stitch. Like that. So into the loop and into the stitch. We're just going to pin those together all the way along. So each loop has a stitch underneath it. So we're just going to pick up the loop before we make our slip stitch. So into the loop and then into the stitch and slip stitch. Into the loop and into the stitch, slip stitch. So loop, stitch, slip stitch. So this will help strengthen our handle because our handle on this side is a little bit weak. There's only a little bit of yarn holding it together. Well, not really, but over the weight of using it, it's better to make sure it's extra secure. So into the loop and into the stitch, slip stitch. And we're just going to do that all the way along until we get past our handle. There. Just like that. So that gives a really nice, strong, reinforced bit where we attached our handle, and it also looks really cute. So now I'm going to go back to the turquoise tutorial and let's keep going. Now when you get to the handle, I've made my last slip stitch into the top of the bag. I'm going to jump over into the first space of the handle. So first space of the handle gets a slip stitch, and then I'm going to slip stitch along the handle, one into each of those spaces along the edge. So you can pause the video and keep working along. One slip stitch into each space along the edge, or one slip stitch into each row, all the way along your handle, and I'll meet you when you get back down over here. When you get to the end of your handle, just keep working into each of those spaces along the edge or each row, like that. And now we're just going to jump down onto our bag, and we're going to slip stitch down into our bag. There. Like that. Chain one to secure your yarn. And now cut your yarn, leaving a long enough tail to sew in with a needle. We do have to sew this tail in. So go ahead and sew in your tail, and also your tail from the white yarn. The tail at the bottom, our starting tail, you can either just cut that off, or you can pull it snug and sew it in so it'll keep that starting ring closed. And you also want to sew in your starting tail, your white tail at the bottom. Inside out your bag, pop in your wine bottle, and you're finished. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial as much as I did. I'm waiting for you in that video up there, and stay hooked.